Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Momo Reads. This is Season 1, Philosophy. In this episode, we're going to be reading Apology by Plato. And to give you a little background on this specific piece of material we're going to be reading today, Apology, while written by Plato, is a documentation of the last speech Socrates ever gave. And contrary to the name of this book, it was not an apology by any means, as this speech was a result of the philosopher Socrates being accused of crimes such as corrupting the youth and refusing to acknowledge his belief in the gods of Athens. And with that information, we're going to begin reading Apology by Plato. How you, O Athenians, have been affected by my accusers, I cannot tell. But I know that they almost made me forget who I was. So persuasively did they speak, and yet they have hardly uttered a word of truth. But of the many falsehoods told by them, there was one which quite amazed me. I mean, when they said that you should be upon your guard and not allow yourselves to be deceived by the force of my eloquence. To say this when they were certain to be detected as soon as I opened my lips and proved myself to be anything but a great speaker, did indeed appear to me most shameless, unless by the force of eloquence they mean the force of truth. For if such is their meaning, I admit that I am eloquent, but in how different a way from theirs? Well, as I was saying, they have scarcely spoken the truth at all, but from me you shall hear the whole truth. Not, however, delivered after their manner in a set oration duly ornamented with words and phrases. No, by heaven! But I shall use the words and arguments which occur to me at the moment, for I am confident in the justice of my cause. Or I am certain that I am right in taking this course. At my time of life, I ought not to be appearing before you, O men of Athens, in the character of a juvenile orator. Let no one expect it of me, and I must beg of you to grant me a favor. If I defend myself in my accustomed manner, and you hear me using the words which I have been in the habit of using in the agora, at the tables of the money changers, or anywhere else, I would ask you not to be surprised, and not to interrupt me on this account. For I am more than 70 years of age, and appearing now for the first time in a court of law, I am quite a stranger to the language of the place, and therefore I would have you regard me as if I were really a stranger, whom you would excuse if he spoke in his native tongue. And after the fashion of this country, am I making an unfair request of you? Never mind the manner, which may or may not be good, but think only of the truth of my words, and give heed to that. Let the speaker speak truly, and the judge decide justly. And here Socrates is making the case that he has been called to trial unjustly, as he believes he is only telling the truth, and that he also maintains his conviction that no matter how eloquently put, the truth must always be said, no matter the consequences. Despite his awareness of the unfairness of his trial, he still submits himself to be judged, no matter how he personally feels about the accusations. That he does not plan to abandon his convictions in order to beg for his life. And with that, we continue. And first, I have to reply to the older charges and to my first accusers, and then I will go on to the latter ones. For of old and I have had many accusers, who have accused me falsely to you during many years, and I am more afraid of them than of Anytus and his associates, who are dangerous too in their own way. But far more dangerous are the others, who began when you were children, and took possession of your minds with their falsehoods, telling of one Socrates, a wise man, who speculated about the heaven above, and searched into the earth beneath, and made the worse appear the better cause. The disseminators of this tale are the accusers whom I dread, for their hearers are apt to fancy that such inquirers do not believe in the existence of the gods. And they are many, and their charges against me are of ancient date. And they were made by them in the days when you were more impressible than you are now, in childhood, or it may have been in youth. And the cause when heard went by default, for there were none to answer. And hardest of all, I do not know and cannot tell the names of my accusers, unless in the chance case of a comic poet. All who from envy and malice have persuaded you, some of them having first convinced themselves. All this class of men are the most difficult to deal with, for I cannot have them up here and cross-examine them, and therefore I must simply fight with shadows in my own defense, and argue when there is no one who answers. I will ask you then to assume with me, as I was saying, that my opponents are of two kinds, one recent, the other ancient, and I hope that you will see propriety of my answer answering the latter first, for these accusations you heard long before the others are much oftener. Well then, I must make my defense, and endeavor to clear away in a short time a slander which has lasted a long time. May I succeed, if to succeed be for my good and yours, or likely to avail me in my cause? The task is not an easy one. I quite understand the nature of it, and so leaving the event with God, in obedience to the law, I will now make my defense. I will begin at the beginning, and ask what is the accusation which has given rise to the slander of me, and in fact has encouraged Meletus to prove his charge against me. Well, what do the slanderers say? They shall be my prosecutors, and I will sum up their words in an affidavit. Socrates is an evildoer and a curious person who searches into things under the earth and in heaven, and he makes the worse appear the better cause, and he teaches the aforesaid doctrines to others. Such is the nature of the accusation. It is just what you have yourself seen in the comedy of Aristophanes, who has introduced a man whom he calls Socrates, going about and saying that he walks in air, and talking a deal of nonsense concerning matters of which I do not pretend to know, either much or little. Not that I meant to speak disparagingly of anyone who is a student of natural philosophy. I should be very sorry if Meletus could bring so grave a charge against me. But the simple truth is, O Athenians, that I have nothing to do with physical speculations. Very many of those here present are witnesses to the truth of this, and to them I appeal. Speak then, you who have heard me, and tell your neighbors whether any of you have ever known me to hold forth in few words, or in many upon such matters. You hear their answer. And from what they say of this part of the charge, you will be able to judge of the truth of the rest. To give you a little context, two characters are brought forth in this passage. Meletus, who is the accuser of Socrates, which, to boil it down to its bare simplicity, was simply jealous of Socrates and was gaining power. And another character mentioned is Aristophanes, who wrote a parody play about Socrates, but from what I could gauge, still vaguely respected him. And with that, we continue. As little foundation is there for the report that I am a teacher, and take money. This accusation has no more truth in it than the other. Although if a man were really able to instruct mankind, to receive money for giving instructions would, in my opinion, be an honor to him. There is Gorgias of Lontium, and Prodicus of Ceos, and Hippias of Elis, who go the round of the cities and are able to persuade the young men to leave their own citizens, by whom they might be taught for nothing, and come to them who they not only pay, but are thankful if they may be allowed to pay them. There is at this time a Parian philosopher residing in Athens, of whom I have heard, and I came to hear of him in this way. I came across a man who has spent a world of money on the sophists, Callias, the son of Hipponicus, and knowing that he had sons, I asked him, Callias, I said, if your two sons were foals or calves, there would be no difficulty in finding someone to put over them. We should hire a trainer of horses, or a farmer probably, who would improve and perfect them in their own proper virtue and excellence. But as they are human beings, whom are you thinking of placing over them? Is there anyone who understands human and political virtue? You must have thought about the matter, for you have sons. Is there anyone? There is, he said. Who is he, said I, and of what country? And what does he charge? Evenus the Parian, he replied. He is the man, and his charge is 5 minae. Happy is Evenus, I said to myself. If he really has this wisdom, and teaches at such a moderate charge, had I the same, I should have been very proud and conceited. But the truth is that I have no knowledge of the kind. It seems like here he is using examples of maybe other philosophers or philosophical teachers who also reside in ancient Greece or Athens as almost a comparison to him to make it evident that he does not teach philosophy for profit, but rather because of his commitment to the truth, as well as even making the point that he doesn't even consider himself a teacher, which might be an example of Socratic irony, as Socrates was very well known for not taking himself too seriously, or even acknowledging his wisdom as a philosopher, as Socrates was the man who coined the very famous phrase, "The only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing." And with that, we continue. I dare say, Athenians, that someone among you will reply, "Yes, Socrates, but what is the origin of these accusations which are brought against you? There must have been something strange which you have been doing. All these rumors and this talk about you would have never arisen if you had been like other men. Tell us then, what is the cause of them? For we should be sorry to judge hastily of you." Now I regard this as a fair challenge, and I will endeavor to explain to you the reason why I am called wise and have such an evil fame. Please to attend then. And although some of you may think that I am joking, I declare that I will tell you the entire truth. Men of Athens, this reputation of mine has come of a certain sort of wisdom which I possess. If you ask me what kind of wisdom, I reply, wisdom such as may perhaps be attained by man. For to that extent I am inclined to believe that I am wise. Whereas the person of whom I was speaking have a superhuman wisdom which I may fail to describe, because I have it not myself. And he who says that I have speaks falsely, and is taking away my character. And here, O men of Athens, I must beg you not to interrupt me, even if I seem to say something extravagant. For the word which I speak is not mine. I will refer to you a witness who is worthy of credit. That witness shall be the god of Delphi. He will tell you about my wisdom, if I have any, and what sort it is. You must have known Chaerephon. He was an early friend of mine, and also a friend of yours, for he shared in the recent exile of the people, and returned with you. Well, Chaerephon, as you know, was very impetuous in all his doings, and he went to Delphi and boldly asked the oracle to tell him whether, as I was saying, I must beg you not to interrupt, he asked the oracle to tell him whether anyone was wiser than I was, and the Pythian prophetess answered that there was no man wiser. Chaerephon is dead himself, but his brother, who is in court, will confirm the truth of what I am saying. Now, to give you some context about what he's talking about, the Oracle of Delphi was the most trusted oracle in ancient Greece and Athens, and the Oracle of Delphi had a very high opinion of Socrates. So I could imagine how he would think that bringing up the oracle and her very high opinion of him would somehow sway the opinion of not only the judge, but the jury. And with that, we continue. Why do I mention this? Because I'm going to explain to you why I have such an evil name. When I heard the answer, I said to myself, what can the god mean? And what is the interpretation of his riddle? For I know that I have no wisdom, small or great. What then can he mean when he says that I am the wisest of men? And yet he is a god and cannot lie. That would be against his nature. After long consideration, I thought of a method of trying the question. I reflected that if I could only find a man wiser than myself, then I might go to the god with a refutation in my hand. I should say to him, here is a man who is wiser than I am, but you said that I was the wisest. Accordingly, I went to one who had the reputation of wisdom and observed him. His name I need not mention. He was a politician who I selected for examination, and the result was as follows. When I began to talk with him, I could not help but think that he was not really wise, although he was thought wise by many and still wiser by himself. And thereupon I tried to explain to him that he thought himself wise, but he was not really wise. And the consequence was that he hated me, and his enmity was shared by several who were present and heard me. So I left him, saying to myself as I went away, well, although I do not suppose that either of us knows anything really beautiful and good, I am better off than he is, for he knows nothing, and thinks that he knows. I neither know nor think that I know. In this latter particular, then, I seem to have slightly the advantage of him. Then I went to another who had a slightly higher pretensions of wisdom, and my conclusion was exactly the same. Whereupon I made another enemy of him, and of many others beside him. And here he makes the case that as a result of being honest with people about what little wisdom they actually do possess, he not only made enemies of many powerful men in Athens, but these enemies as a result might have been conspiring to his demise. So I guess in conclusion, he was put on trial for being a G. And with that, we continue. Then I went to one man after another, being not unconscious of the enmity which I provoked. And I lamented and feared this, but necessity was laid upon me. The word of God, I thought, ought to be considered first. And I said to myself, go I must to all who appear to know, and find out the meaning of the oracle. And I swear to you, Athenians, by the dog I swear, for I must tell you the truth. The result of my mission was just this. I found that the men most in repute were all but the most foolish, and that others less esteemed were really wiser and better. I will tell you the tale of my wanderings, and of the Herculean labors, as I may call them, which I endured only to find at last the oracle irrefutable. After the politicians, I went to the poets, tragic, dithyrambic, and all sorts. And there I said to myself, you will be instantly detected. Now you will find out that you are more ignorant than they are. Accordingly, I took them some of the most elaborate passages in their own writings, and asked what was the meaning of them, thinking that they would teach me something. Will you believe me? I am almost ashamed to confess the truth, but I must say that there is hardly a person present who would not have talked better about their poetry than they did themselves. Then I knew that not by wisdom do poets write poetry, but by a sort of genius and inspiration. They are like diviners or soothsayers, who also say many fine things, but do not understand the meaning of them. The poets appeared to me to be much in the same case, and I further observed that upon the strength of their poetry, they believed themselves to be the wisest of men in other things in which they were not wise. So I departed, conceiving myself to be superior to them, for the same reason that I was superior to the politicians. At last I went to the artisans. I was conscious that I knew nothing at all, as I may say, and I was sure that they knew many fine things, and here I was not mistaken, for they did know many things of which I was ignorant, and in this they certainly were wiser than I was. But I observed that even the good artisans fell into the same error as the poets. Because they were good workmen, they thought they also knew all sorts of high matters, and this defect in them overshadowed their wisdom. And therefore I asked myself on behalf of the oracle, whether I would like to be as I was, neither having their knowledge nor their ignorance, or like them in both. And I made answer to myself and to the oracle that I was better off as I was. So here Socrates was basically explaining that he went to all kinds of quote-unquote wise men to seek true wisdom, and to see if he could disprove the oracle's belief that he was truly the wisest man in the world. And in this quest he was left disappointed, as he could find no one wiser. And in the next passage, he's going to get into how that made him quite a few more enemies, which possibly led to the fact that he was 70 years old, facing the death penalty, meaning that he was trying to plead the case that he was being tried unjustly, simply for the crime of trying to pursue the truth. And with that, we continue. This inquisition has led to my having many enemies of the worst and most dangerous kind, and has given occasion also to many calumnies. And I am called wise, for my hearers always imagine that I myself possess the wisdom, which I find wanting in others. But the truth is, O men of Athens, that God only is wise, and by his answer he intends to show that the wisdom of men is worth little or nothing. He is not speaking of Socrates. He is only using my name by way of illustration, as if he said he, O men, is the nothing. And so I go on about the world, obedient to the god, and search and make inquiry into the wisdom of any one, whether citizen or stranger, who appears to be wise. And if he is not wise, then in vindication of the oracle, I show him that he is not wise, and my occupation quite absorbs me. And I have no time to give either to any public matter or interest, or to any concern of my own, but I am in utter poverty by reason of my devotion to the god. There is another thing. Young men of the richer classes, who have not much to do, come about me of their own accord. They like to hear the pretenders examined, and they often imitate me and proceed to examine others. There are plenty of persons, as they quickly discover, who they think they know something, but really know little or nothing. And then those who are examined by them, instead of being angry with themselves, are angry with me. This confounded Socrates, they say, this villainous misleader of the youth. And then if somebody asks them, why? What evil does he practice or teach? They do not know and cannot tell. But in order that they may not appear to be at a loss, they repeat the ready-made charges which are used against all philosophers, about teaching things up in the clouds and under the earth, and having no gods, and making the worse appear the better cause. For they do not like to confess that their pretense of knowledge has been detected, which is the truth. And as they are numerous and ambitious and energetic, and are drawn up in battle array and have persuasive tongues, they have filled your ears with their loud and inveterate calumnies. And this is the reason why my three accusers, Meletus and Antius and Lycon, have set upon me. Antius on the belief of the craftsmen and politicians, Lycon on behalf of the rhetoricians, and as I said at the beginning, I cannot expect to get rid of such a mass of calumny all in one moment. And this, O men of Athens, is the truth and the whole truth. I have concealed nothing, I have dissembled nothing, and yet I know that my plainness of speech makes them hate me. And what is their hatred but a proof that I am speaking the truth? Hence has arisen the prejudice against me, and that is the reason of it, as you will find out either in this or in my future inquiry. I have said enough in my defense against the first class of accusers. I turn to the second class. They are headed by Meletus, the good man and true lover of his country, as he calls himself. Against these two, I must try to make a defense. Let their affidavit be read. It contains something of this kind. It says that Socrates is a doer of evil, who corrupts the youth, and who does not believe in the gods of the state, but has other new divinities of his own. Such is the charge, and now let us examine the particular accounts. He says that I am a doer of evil, and corrupt the youth. But I say, O men of Athens, that Meletus is a doer of evil, in that he pretends to be in earnest, when he is only in jest, and is so eager to bring men to trial, from a pretended zeal and interest about matters in which he never really had the smallest interest. And the truth of this I will endeavor to prove to you. So basically, I'm going to simplify what Socrates was trying to say there. Basically, Socrates has a bunch of haters. Haters on only the account that Socrates has something important, wise, and truthful to say, and they do not. And in order to keep their positions of power as the men that they are, they have to eliminate a philosophy as truthful as Socrates is, as his philosophy threatens the untruthful way of life they have grown accustomed to. And by using the corruption of the youth of Athens as a scapegoat, they are able to paint Socrates' philosophy as dangerous to society, and therefore giving a justification for this philosophy to be eradicated. And in order for the philosophy to be eradicated, at least a little bit, so must Socrates. And with that, we continue. Come hither, Meletus, and let me ask a question of you. You think a great deal about the improvement of youth? Yes, I do. Tell the judges then, who is their improver? For you must know, as you have taken the pains to discover their corrupter, and are citing and accusing me before them. Speak then, and tell the judges who their improver is. Observe, Meletus, that you are silent and have nothing to say. But is not this rather disgraceful, and a very considerable proof of what I was saying, that you have no interest in the matter? Speak up, friend, and tell us who their improver is. The laws. But that, my good sir, is not my meaning. I want to know who the person is. Who, in the first place, knows the laws? The judges, Socrates, who are present in the court. What do you mean to say, Meletus? That they are able to instruct and improve the youth? Certainly they are. What, all of them? Or some only and not others? All of them. By the goddess Here, this is good news. There are plenty of improvers then. And what do you say of the audience? Do they improve them? Yes, they do. And the senators? Yes, the senators improve them. But perhaps the members of the assembly corrupt them. Or do they too improve them? They improve them. Then every Athenian improves and elevates them, all with the exception of myself. Am I alone their corrupter? Is that what you affirm? That is what I stoutly affirm. I am very unfortunate if you are right. But suppose I ask you a question. How about horses? Does one man do them harm and all the world good? Is not the exact opposite the truth? If one man is able to do them good, or at least not many, the trainer of horses, that is to say, does them good, and others who have to do with them rather injure them? Is not that true, Meletus, of horses, or of any other animals? Most assuredly it is, whether you and Anytus say yes or no. Happy indeed would be the condition of youth, if they had one corrupter only, and all the rest of the world were their improvers. But you, Meletus, have sufficiently shown that you have never had a thought about the young. Your carelessness is seen in your not caring about the very things that you bring against me. And now, Meletus, I will ask you another question. By Zeus, I will. Which is better, to live among bad citizens or among good ones? Answer, friend, I say. The question is one which may be easily answered. Do not the good do their neighbors good? And the bad do them evil? Certainly. And is there anyone who would rather be injured than benefited by those who live with them? Answer, my good friend. The law requires you to answer. Does anyone like to be injured? Certainly not. And when you accuse me of corrupting and deteriorating the youth, do you allege that I corrupt them intentionally or unintentionally? Intentionally, I say. But you have just admitted that the good do their neighbors good and the evil do them evil. Now, is that a truth which your superior wisdom has recognized thus early in life? Or am I, at my age, in such darkness and ignorance as not to know if a man with whom I have to live is corrupted by me? I am very likely to be harmed by him. And yet I corrupt him. And intentionally, too. So you say, although neither I nor any other human being is ever likely to be convinced by you, But either I do not corrupt them, or I corrupt them unintentionally. And on either view of the case, you lie. If my offense is unintentional, the law has no cognizance of unintentional offenses. You ought to have taken me privately, and warned and admonished me. For if I had better advised, I should have left off doing what I only did unintentionally. No doubt I should. And you would have nothing to say to me, and refuse to teach me. And now you bring me up in this court, which is a place not of instruction, but of punishment. It will be very clear to you, Athenians, as I was saying, that Meletus has no care at all, great or small, about the matter. But still I should like to know, Meletus, in which I am affirmed to corrupt the young. I suppose you mean, as I infer from your indictment, that I teach them not to acknowledge the gods, which the state acknowledges, but some other new divinities or spiritual agencies in their stead. These are the lessons by which I corrupt the youth, as you say. Yes, that I say emphatically. Then, by the gods, Meletus, of whom we are speaking, tell me in the court, in somewhat plainer terms, what you mean. For I do not as yet understand whether you affirm that I teach other men to acknowledge some gods, and therefore I do believe in gods, and am not an entire atheist. This you do not lay to my charge, but only you say that they are not the same gods which the city recognizes. This you do not lay to my charge, but only you say that they are not the same gods which the city recognizes. The charge is that they are different gods. Or do you mean that I am an atheist simply, and a teacher of atheism? I mean the latter, that you are a complete atheist. What an extraordinary statement! Why do you think so, Meletus? Do you mean that I do not believe in the godhead of the sun or moon like other men? I assure you, judges, that he does not. For he says that the sun is stone and the moon earth. Friend Meletus, you think you are accusing Anaxagoras. And you have but a bad opinion of the judges, if you fancy them illiterate to such a degree as to not know these doctrines are found in the books of Anaxagoras the Clazomanian, which are full of them. And so, forsooth, the youth are said to be taught them by Socrates, when they are not unfrequently exhibitions of them at the theater. And they might pay their money and laugh at Socrates if he pretends to father these extraordinary views. And so, Meletus, you really think that I do not believe in God? So that passage we just read was the introduction of Meletus's dialogue. Just to remind you, Meletus being the main accuser of Socrates in his crime of not only attempting to corrupt the youth, but also of atheism. And with that, I come to the conclusion of part 1 of our reading of Apology by Plato. We will continue on and finish Apology by Plato in the next episode of Momo Reads. I hope you enjoyed my reading of Socrates' speech, as well as my commentary, and I'll see you in episode 2 of Momo Reads.